Welcome to the Egg Zoomer walkthrough video. My name is Brooke Mader, and I am a clinical educator with the Vibrant Clinical team. The Egg Zoomer is one of the many food zoomers that Vibrant offers. Food zoomers are a peptide-level antibody food sensitivity test. Some things to highlight about the Egg Zoomer are this test is specific only to hen eggs. The Egg Zoomer also tests for a true IgE allergy to both egg white and egg yolk. Some proteins in hen eggs are similar enough in molecular structure or have enough homology to duck or fowl eggs where they may also be potentially inflammatory in some individuals. Something to keep in mind is it is impossible to separate the yolks from the egg whites 100%. Even if you purchase liquid egg whites in the store, in the cartons, there's some residual yolk proteins in it. Same with using a yolk separator. There's always that residual egg white in the yolk. Therefore, if someone is only reactive to the proteins in egg yolk or only reactive to the proteins in egg whites, doesn't mean it's safe for that person to eat the non-reactive portion because of the residual exposure. For example, if I only had antibodies to the proteins in egg white, and while eating egg yolk theoretically might be okay because I'm not reacting to those proteins, it's impossible for me to only eat egg yolk without being exposed to some egg white. Oral challenges are cautioned simply because it can be difficult for a person to associate the symptoms that are happening hours or even days after consuming a food, especially when they may not be paying that close attention to all of the ingredients in everything they're eating. And eggs are one of those ingredients that are so ubiquitous. They show up in a lot of things and they aren't always an obvious ingredient. Symptoms of egg sensitivity can often mimic or overlap with symptoms of other conditions or other food sensitivities. Distinguishing between egg sensitivity and other conditions can therefore be a little difficult without specific peptide level testing. Sensitivities to peptides in eggs can show up hours or days after consuming eggs. These sensitivities are based on IgG or IgA antibody-driven reaction and can affect any system in the body, from the skin to the joints, brain, and other organs and tissue systems. Food sensitivity tests are testing whole proteins, the undigested in its whole form. It's a lot like an entire pearl necklace balled up and looks like the image on the right. It is what would be present in the food before digestion happens, before hydrochloric acid and protease break these proteins down. Essentially, whole protein testing is testing undigested protein. Vibrant's food zoomers, on the other hand, are testing peptides within a protein. So all the different pearls within that pearl necklace, like the picture on the left. And this is important because these peptides are what's actually going to be present in the intestinal lumen after we eat that food, and what will potentially be exposed to our immune system. A whole protein will rarely be exposed to your immune system unless you have digestion insufficiency and it's not being broken down. The reasons why I love the Egg Zoomer and why it's so superior is because reproducibility is higher. It doesn't rely on the person having sufficient amounts of stomach acid or enzymes. Cross-reactivity is eliminated because peptides do not have molecular mimicry to other proteins that are unrelated. It's able to measure thousands of peptides in one whole protein for a full spectrum of reactivity. And again, rarely will a person's immune system be exposed only to the whole protein form of the food once the food reaches the small intestine. Therefore, peptide level testing provides the most accurate measurement of reactivity. These are the markers measured on the Egg Zoomer. We're looking at both egg white and egg yolk antigens. And this is what an Egg Zoomer panel looks like as far as what's being reacted to. At the top, you can get a clear picture of whether or not the person has an egg sensitivity and or a true IgE egg allergy. As you can see, this person is very sensitive to eggs, and it should be eliminated for about 6 months while they heal their gut. It's a good idea to retest down the line. And as you can see, this person has their previous results listed on the right to get a good then and now picture. These are just some things to keep in mind when it comes to egg proteins. There have been studies done on the stability of the proteins. And this can make a big difference in some people as far as if they're able to eat eggs or not. When you see antibodies to certain proteins, if they are heat or acid stable, it means they don't break down, that they retain their structure in high heats and low pH environments, like during cooking or baking and in our stomach during digestion. So those proteins will remain intact and will remain antigenic despite being cooked or baked into foods and despite hydrochloric acid conditions in the stomach. The point is, on the test results, each of the markers have comments that describe whether or not the proteins are heat stable, pH stable, or enzymatic stable, which are the 3 things that can denature proteins in the human body. So if a person is only sensitive to the non-heat stable proteins, for example, if they were only sensitive to ovalbumin, which is not heat stable, it might be safe for that person to consume products that have cooked eggs in them, like muffins, because the egg is cooked. If the person has antibodies to ovomucoid as well as ovalbumin, the person should not consume eggs because ovomucoid proteins do not break down during cooking or digestion, even though the ovalbumin does. YGP42 is heat stable but acid labile, meaning that it's not going to break down during cooking, but it will in stomach acid. So this may be a concern in patients with hypochlorhydria. This could be a concern simply because the patient may not have enough stomach acid or the pH may not be low enough to break down the protein. But again, if the patient is reacting to any of the other proteins that are heat and acid stable, then whether or not it's acid labile is irrelevant at that point. There are some proteins in eggs like alpha-livetin that are going to have some cross-reactivity as well as sensitization. Research has found that there may be some crossover, and a person sensitive to that protein may not be able to consume chicken without creating those antibodies. Standard practice is to eliminate foods to which one is sensitive to, create a rotational diet of their non-reactive foods, then reintroduce the sensitive foods once the intestinal barrier is repaired and the immune intolerance or immune tolerance is restored to the gut. Consider testing for intestinal permeability on the wheat zoomer to assess the status of the intestinal permeability before reintroducing the food. Typically, if one has positive IgG antibodies to any of the peptides, you want to eliminate the food for 3 to 6 months. It's important to pay attention to food labels. Labels that read may contain egg should be avoided. Sometimes egg protein are listed as an ingredient under different names like albumin, globulin, lecithin, livetin, lysozyme, vitalin, or any ingredient that starts with ovo or ova after the Latin name for egg. As always, you can find a handful of resources on the portal under the Education tab, including a validation report, a sample report, and an egg-free lifestyle guide.